What is up, everybody? This is Alex from IHE TV. Today I'm talking about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, a film I was kind of unfairly not looking forward to for some reason. I don't know if it's just the fact that a bunch of his movies kind of have the spirit and thematic substance of Frankenstein anyway, so part of me was like, why does he even need to do this? But now that I've seen it, I totally get it. It didn't take long for me to kind of fall for this movie. I really thought it was great. And as far as spoilers go, it's Frankenstein. I don't really know how you could spoil it outside of like specific production design choices or little details here and there. I haven't read the book, but from what I understand, this is the most faithful adaptation we've seen in cinema, at least. I was intimidated by that runtime, but I didn't feel it at all. I thought structurally it was really interesting, which you might be able to credit to the book, I don't know, but I loved having the different perspectives. This Danish ship that was trapped in ice. I love they didn't have to compromise and have the Danish dudes speaking in English when they're conversing with each other. They actually speak in Danish, which is awesome. But Oscar Isaac as Victor, framing his side of the story as this somewhat unreliable narrator. I love his line about some of it being fact, but all of it being true. It feels big and glossy and important, and just leans into Guillermo's strengths with these monster characters, this production design, which I'll get into more in a second, but this fairy tale feeling. I was truly sucked into the film during this scene when Victor is first showing off his earlier experiments, because Guillermo just has such a unique, instantly recognizable aesthetic and art direction that he goes for that really connects with me, that really gels with me. From smaller details, just like the design of this coffin, all the way to this immense commitment to the practicality and realism of these huge sets, or the actual intricate design of Frankenstein's monster himself. It was quite an achievement, especially from a production design standpoint, which I was constantly in awe of. And this Victorian, gothic, gruesome subject matter just goes with his styling so well. And with this constant complaint about like big popular movies having dull color palettes that miss out on one of the best parts of filmmaking, which is the use of color and shading and lighting. It's so colorful and varied with all the different locations and sets. It's a joy to watch and just look at, let alone the substance of the performances. Oh, I love this costume. Thought this was a really cool costume design. And the way everything feeds into itself, the lighting perfectly, complementing the set design, complementing the acting, complementing the story, it all just feeds into itself. It makes for a very rewarding watch. Despite the fact that this is a story that is done to death in pop culture and media, it finds a way to navigate through that and give itself its own personality, its own voice. And I've seen some complaints about the first act of the movie, showing Victor's childhood and the whole Charles Dance stuff. But I thought that gave the film a bit more texture and gave his character a bit more context. And I loved how these smaller characters would kind of come in and out. And even though they're only in it for a small amount of time, they leave a big impression because of how well the filmmaking is put together. Those in particular, I would say Christoph Waltz, Charles Dance. I think it's a good feeling when you're left wanting more of something, which in my case is anytime I see Charles Dance in anything. He's the definition of screen presence. He just owns whatever scene he's in, and I love that dynamic with him giving them the Frankenstein name and the resentment that Victor has towards him, and the way the story organically moves from Victor's brother being born to then the time jump and him marrying Mia Goth, which then gets Christoph Waltz into the picture. It is familiar territory for Guillermo as far as a epic fairy tale set during wartime with period piece elements sprinkled in there. But I love that build-up with them talking with Christoph Waltz, with the nervous system sprayed across the wood. So many memorable images that are now burned into my mind. I've seen some other complaints about the monster's design, saying that it looks too much like the Prometheus space jockeys, or that he doesn't look sewn together enough. But I like that. It feels like its own thing. It feels very Guillermo. And the practicality of it really just sold it for me, combined with Jacob Elordi's performance, who brings a wide tone of emotions from the character. He's scary when he needs to be. He's childlike and playful when he needs to be. It's just a great execution of this concept and character. These meticulous small details that are integrated into most scenes in the movie, like, I don't know why it stuck out to me so much. There's a scene early on with Charles Dance who pushes his fork at the dinner table into a bloody piece of meat and hands it to his wife. And this subtle sound design of the fork sliding off the finger, the timing of things, the droplets of blood falling down, the timing of the cuts, I found it quite gripping. I think the tragedy at the core of it is part of why it's stuck in culture the way it has, why it is so ubiquitous, because of the truth at the heart of its story about the suffering of existence, or the lust for purpose and meaning and identity, especially in how that relates to one's parents and the longing and pain and suffering associated with that. Now, as someone who hasn't read the book, my understanding is that Mary Shelley was inspired by her distant relationship with her own dad, and realize that through the personification of her suffering in the form of Frankenstein's monster, who's brought into this world by someone who ultimately wants nothing to do with him or is running away from him, and the twisted nature of existence that is explored through taking the nature of birth out of it completely. There is something whimsical and grotesque about the idea of stitching body parts of criminals and people who've died in wars to create this abomination that is good-natured at heart but never asked to be put into this situation and is cursed to this hellish existence. Some beautiful posters for this movie too. I guess one of my fears going into this was that they were gonna overly pretty boy Frankenstein's monster, with it being Jacob Elordi of Euphoria and everything, but he was gangly and creepy enough to sell it in a way that didn't feel like it was locked into being a 2025 movie. It just feels like the timeless fairy tale that it is. I did enjoy how it likened, as primarily explored through Mia Goth's character, the idea of powerful rich men using... That's not Mia Goth. No, it is. She just looks different in this picture for some reason. What was I saying? Yeah, the idea of likening these rich, powerful people that are using soldiers who are sent around the world to do their bidding, dying on the battlefield while they're comfortable at home, and how that relates to the hubris and lack of humanity and empathy that winds up coming out of Victor himself. I've been gushing for most of this review so far, and the only thing I really didn't like about the movie was some of the CG, especially towards the end with some kind of CG animals I didn't love. And I've seen some complaints about Oscar Isaac in the movie, but I enjoyed his presence. I thought he sold the character well. How fucking old is this dude at this point? Wow, he's like 83. Fair play. I did notice that Netflix has a 40-odd minute documentary about the making of that I'm gonna have to check out, because that's definitely my favorite part of this, just how they put it together, the costumes, the production. Yeah, I don't think there's much I would change about this. I was not anticipating enjoying it quite this much. Being so familiar with the story, with how familiar territory it feels for him, I was just enthralled for the full 2.5 hours. Which makes my rating of 3.5 stars almost seem to not match with my review. It would be a very high 3.5 stars, maybe could go up on a rewatch. But that's just what I'm feeling at the moment. I don't know why I'm so surprised that Guillermo del Toro made like an awesome, freaky Frankenstein movie, especially with that cast. I didn't mention the music either. Composed by Alexander Desplat, who's usually pretty reliable. Doesn't overdo it, keeps it pretty subtle, just complements what he needs to, creates a nice soundscape, where all the filmmaking elements are just so meticulously well put together that even if there were little things here and there, like the line kind of spelling out to the audience about Victor being the real monster in the end and all that kind of corny stuff, winds up feeling more like a nitpick to me. With how much it gets right, I feel like if every movie was made with this level of dedication and commitment to the real and the tangible, we would be in a good place. So what did you think of Frankenstein? Did it work for you? Did it not work for you? Did you like it more or less than me? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video.